Shortly after their escape from Egypt, the people of Israel were commanded to construct a portable tabernacle that was a physical reminder of God's presence among them. Not only then did God provide instructions for how the community should behave towards one another, but God also established a symbol of God's consistent company with the people. Such should have been a source of comfort, and it was for a long period of time. It is within this context that God's desire and explanations for different types of sacrifices are spelled out within Leviticus. Oftentimes, much of this book is overlooked in contemporary Christianity. Cheryl Anderson shows us the relevancy of these passages, and more importantly, she explains how these acts are intimately connected to Israel's desire to be holy and pleasing before God.
In Exodus chapter 6, before the exodus from Egypt begins, God tells Moses to convey this message to the Israelites: I will take you as my people, and I will be your God. It is after the exodus, during the time in the wilderness, that the Israelites learn what being God's people will entail. First, after hearing the laws, they must agree to uphold them. All that the Lord has spoken we will do, and we will be obedient, is their response. Moses then conducts a covenant ratification ceremony. He takes half of the blood from sacrificed oxen and splashes it against an altar he built earlier, and then takes the other half of the blood and splashes it on the people, saying, See the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words. The use of animal blood as the blood of the covenant solidifies the relationship between God and the people. Animals are part of God's creation, and blood is the vehicle of life. Splashing the animal's blood on the altar affirms that its life belongs to God, and to then splash that blood on the people affirms that they too belong to God. Through the covenant ceremony in Exodus chapter 24, the Israelites learned that as God's special people, they now have special responsibilities. In the next chapter, Exodus 25, God tells them that their very first responsibility is to build the tabernacle. The tabernacle is a structure that will allow God to dwell among them. It is also a movable structure, a portable sanctuary, so that God can remain with them as they continue their journey. God specifies that the tabernacle must have 4 items: the Ark of the Covenant, the mercy seat, a table of acacia wood, and a lampstand. Each of these has great theological significance. The Ark, a wooden container, is to hold the tablets of the 10 Commandments, a visible reminder of the people's commitment to God. The mercy seat is a place where the power of human sin to damage the people's relationship with God is covered over or eliminated. Then the table of acacia wood is to always have on it loaves of bread, thought to represent the nourishment received from God. Finally, the lampstand will literally light the space in front of it, but that same light symbolizes God's ability to defeat darkness and so create a safe place for the people of God. It is no coincidence, then, that the Israelites received the law and liturgy at the same time. The law embodies their covenantal responsibilities. Liturgy will enable them to live up to those responsibilities by affirming the continuing presence of God that offers sustenance and light, mercy, and forgiveness. In Exodus, God gives the instructions for building the tabernacle. In Leviticus, God outlines the worship practices, including the types of sacrifices needed to ensure the continuation of the divine presence. The sanctuary then becomes the intermediate space between the human and divine realms, with the priests serving as mediators between these two realms. The sacrifices, in a way, are a type of communication between the people and their God. For example, the cereal or grain offering is a gift that acknowledges the benefits received from God, and the peace or well-being offering celebrates the state of shalom, spiritual, economic, and relational wholeness. Both offerings are forms of thanksgiving. You shall be holy, for I, Yahweh, your God, am holy, says Leviticus chapter 19, verse 1. The sacrificial system described in the rest of Leviticus can be fully understood only from the perspective of this people striving to be holy as God demands. The first thing to understand is that to be holy is to be pure, and the opposite is to be impure. Unfortunately, the state of being pure or impure is sometimes confused with being clean or unclean, but that concept has nothing to do with cleanliness as we know it today. Instead, to be holy and therefore to be pure is to lead a life that is in divine order. That definition of order, set forth in these priestly laws, influences all aspects of daily life, ranging from intimate bodily functions to the types of foods eaten. Although scholars don't know for sure what makes one thing pure and another impure, some patterns are discernible. For example, ritual impurity comes from childbirth and caring for the dead, times when the forces of life and death meet. Similarly, the Israelites only eat the meat of certain domesticated animals, and only when slaughtered by a few designated persons. The killing must be done quickly and humanely, and the blood of the slaughtered animal must be properly drained, because the animal's lifeblood belongs to God and must not be eaten. Something else to understand about this sacrificial system is that crossing the boundaries between purity and impurity results inevitably in an offense. And even an offense by one individual has a physical effect on the sanctuary. Furthermore, each type of offense is associated with the tainting of specific areas of either the tabernacle in the wilderness or the later temple in Jerusalem. According to the ancient Israelite worldview, if the pollution were allowed to accumulate, it would mean that God could no longer inhabit the sanctuary. Unable to occupy the sanctuary, God would no longer be with them. To prevent that situation from happening, offenses needed to be counteracted. This took place through the act of atonement, the process of achieving and maintaining oneness and reconciliation with God. In this sense, atonement is not the appeasement of an angry deity or a bribe for an arbitrary one. Instead, acts of atonement removed some barrier to right relationship with God. In other words, atonement is the work of expiation, the elimination of impediments. Ultimately, atonement is about a fully restored relationship with God. Among several of the appointed festivals of the Lord, observed annually by the Israelites, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, is the one addressing this work of expiation. Individuals were to use the purification offering to eliminate the harm that their transgressions might have caused. But what if someone has failed to make amends, whether intentionally or unintentionally? Yom Kippur is the cultic ritual designed to cleanse the sanctuary by covering over the effects of any violations that occurred in the previous year on behalf of the whole community. Aaron, the high priest, purifies the sanctuary by, among other things, sacrificing one goat and sprinkling its blood on and around the mercy seat. Next, the offenses of the community are symbolically transferred to a second goat, the scapegoat. That goat is then sent into the wilderness, carrying the iniquities of the people with him. Our current understanding of a scapegoat is based on the practice described here in Leviticus. As part of the ritual of the scapegoat, the Israelites offered penitential prayers. Consequently, the Day of Atonement purified the sanctuary as well as the human heart. Although Israelite sacrificial practices may seem foreign to most Christians today, they form the basis on which early Christians came to understand the life and death of Jesus Christ. As the writer of the letter to the Hebrews states, the offering of the body of Jesus accomplished the purpose of sacrifices, namely the reconciliation of God and humanity once and for all. Consequently, animal sacrifices were no longer necessary. Henceforth, sacrifices should consist of praise, good deeds, and sharing with others. The abiding significance of these priestly laws in the Christian canon, however, is that they remind us of our ongoing responsibility to God in all aspects of our existence. They cut across the boundaries of public and private, individual and communal, inner and outer expressions, voluntary and involuntary actions, and intended and unintended consequences. They also underscore the importance of worship and remind us that how we live our lives should itself be an act of worship.